Welcome back, patreon.com/the Derrick Lamon Experience, your one-stop shop for your gaming news. Also now available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, all that good stuff as well. Obviously, early access goes to patrons first, so if you want to hear The Week in Gaming in its original time slot, as well as other exclusive audio content and video content, you should subscribe to patreon.com/the Derrick Lamon Experience. I'm breaking this up into two parts because, well, I have advanced screening tickets to the Michael Jackson biopic, so my normal night that I would record actually got moved up because I joined a group of individuals and we created another show. So my schedule's all over the place, and we're trying to finish production on this fourth feature film, so be on the lookout for that pretty soon. So I wanted to go ahead and get started and with this particular episode. So the top story is actually split into two parts. One part's Sony, one part Microsoft, just because these crazy things happen. So let's go ahead and start with Sony. This is very, very interesting. And this had, I know, the Twitter timeline, all the buzz. I'm pretty sure Reddit is crazy as well about this. Shuhei Yoshida was once the man over at PlayStation. He is now kind of opening his mouth and talking about things that have happened to him. So this is very interesting. And a lot of people feel vindicated by this, and they feel like, you know, we got some information from Shuhei, and I think a lot of people believe Shuhei to be a very reliable source as to what really went on. So, in brief, Shuhei Yoshida, previously head of Sony Worldwide Studios for 11 years, has remarked that he was, quote, fired from the role by then CEO Jim Ryan because I didn't listen to him. Yoshida suggested Ryan asked to do some ridiculous things, and Shuhei said no, before saying that he highly enjoyed the role Ryan offered him as head of PlayStation Indies. Yoshida was speaking at Australian Games Festival Alt Games, sharing perspective on what he believes makes a successful indie game. Speaking at the 2026 edition, 31-year PlayStation veteran introduced himself by recounting his long career, including his transition from leading PlayStation's first-party studio efforts for over a decade to become the company's indie game evangelist as head of PlayStation Indies. Quote, I helped Santa Monica to make God of War, Naughty Dog to make Uncharted, and The Last of Us, and Sucker Punch to make the beautiful Ghost of Tsushima, he said, describing his work during the 2000s. Ghost of Tsushima was one of the last games that I worked on as president of Worldwide Studios, which is now, it used to be SIE Worldwide. Now it's called PlayStation Studios and has been for a few years now. But in 2019, after 11 years leading the first-party development, I was fired from the role. Jim Ryan wanted to remove me from first party because I didn't listen to him, he said jovially. Prompting laughter from the audience, he asked me to do some ridiculous things, and I said no. When Guerrilla Games co-founder Herman Hulst was announced as the new head of Worldwide Studios, Sony was vague about the terms of the transition, simply saying that Yoshida will leave his current position as president of Worldwide Studios to become head of a newly formed initiative that will focus on nurturing external independent creators, aka indies. Now, Jim Ryan, who joined Sony Computer Entertainment in 1994, served as CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment, SIE, from 2019 to 2024. During Ryan's tenure, SIE moved into film and television production, reorganized Sony Worldwide Studios into PlayStation Studios, acquired Insomniac Games, Housemarque, Nixxes, Bluepoint Games, rest in peace, Haven Studios, Bungie, and made a concerted effort to publish games on PC and develop live service titles, at one point targeting 12 new live service releases by 2025. Here it is, 2026, and 8 of those 12 games got canceled or suffered the fate of Concord. Jim Ryan, I've been saying this for a while, and everybody's like, you don't know that, you don't know that, you don't know that. I don't think Shuhei is lying. Shuhei says, because I grew up with Jim from the PS1 days, you don't want to have one of your friends as your subordinate, Yoshida remarked. However, Ryan offered Yoshida the role to focus on improving PlayStation support for indie development because everybody in the company knew how much I loved indie games. Quote, I really enjoyed the role of promoting and evangelizing indie games, he emphasized. Yoshida eventually left PlayStation in January 2025 after 31 years with the company and formed his own indie game consulting firm, YASP Incorporated. As he describes it, I was helping indie publishers and developers at Sony for the last 5 years, so I feel like I'm continuing to do the same kind of thing, but now I am freelance. I'm free to show up in any podcast. Now I can talk about Nintendo, Xbox, Steam, he said, to more audience laughter. And I get to see how Nintendo and Xbox support indies, so it's very, very cool. And I'm happy for him. I'm very happy for him. And the rest of his talk titled What Makes an Indie Game Successful, Yoshida walked through 12 standout indie games that resonated with him and the reasons why. They included Journey and Before Your Eyes for making him cry, Dead Cells and Nine Souls for feeling good in his hands, Inscription and Doki Doki Literature Club for being not what they seemed, Cut of the Lamb and Ball X Pit for mixing genres well, Viewfinder and World Game for making up their own rules, Fall Guys and Marvel Snap because you can feel other people. Yoshida also used this talk to provide advice for indie developers. When you follow the trend, you are already too late. He suggested and shared stories about his crippling Marvel Snap addiction. There's a quote that I heard on a West Side Gun song that says, "He who claps for applause or performs for applause has already lost his audience," and I kind of feel like that's what he's saying here. The first 3 years ago, I played this game with 3 accounts because I couldn't get enough. I used to say during that time that I've been between playing Marvel Snap, so that destroyed me. Yoshida says he's eventually dropped one Marvel Snap account per year until weaning himself off the game completely. At the end of December of 2025, the admission of his effort was met with applause. I'm not really into Marvel Snap, so I don't have anything to say to that. But to Jim Ryan, the biggest, and I mean this in the most sincere way possible, the biggest fuck you ever. I always felt something was off with that. You don't take the head of Worldwide Studios, who's fostered such titles as he mentioned, as Uncharted, The Last of Us, God of War being rebooted in 2018, Ghost of Tsushima, which was a totally new thing for Sucker Punch, all these games, and then say, why don't you go work on the indies? Not that there's anything wrong with that. Undertale, great indie game. Fall Guys, great indie game. There's a lot of really, really Shovel Knight. I think you can Stardew Valley. These are all great indie games. If Jim was just kind of letting show, because running at the time Worldwide Studios with PlayStation Studios, that's a heavy, heavy deal. Okay, I need you to understand the if you don't know, just go to Google and you can find out what the budget was for The Last of Us Part 2 or what the budget was for God of War. These are hundreds of $1 million entertainment properties that he has to foster. He has to fly out. Like, all these studios are not in the same place. He's got to go to Santa Monica, California, and check in on what Sony Santa Monica's doing in the God of War universe or some other title. Sony Bend is named Sony Bend because it's in Bend, Oregon, so he's got to travel up there. Insomniac is in North Carolina, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember off the top of my head. But when you're the head of Worldwide Studios, you have to go all around. Guerrilla Games isn't even in the U.S., so that's an international flight he would have to take. You have to manage these studios, and then you have to get with these teams before what used to be E3, but now we just kind of call it game season. And you have to say, all right, we want to knock everybody's fucking socks off. What do you have for us to show? That E3 presentation where Sony just went fucking ballistic, where they showed us the Final Fantasy VII Remake trailer, the one where I don't know if it's the same one where we saw the God of War reboot. We didn't know who it was because nobody knew who Atreus was at that time, and then we see Kratos, and it's like, holy shit, Kratos as a kid, and we're getting a new God of War, and finding out it was in the Norse mythology, and then, like, the end of God of War when Thor shows up and shit like that. Like, Shuhei Yoshida was at the helm of all of this. He had to manage all this talent, and then he's got to go to Naughty Dog and talk to Neil Druckmann and say, well, what have you got to show me? And just imagine holding on. Like, number one, you leave these studios, and essentially it's like seeing what he had to see at all these studios. It's like, if I lent you my eyeballs, your fucking head would explode, because we've got a great slate of games coming up. And Jim Ryan, for some reason, said, yeah, I know we've won countless Game of the Year. Last of Us Part 2 was the most awarded video game in history a couple years ago. I think something just barely surpassed it. But imagine it's Jim Ryan saying, "This is cool, but you know what's really cool? That Fortnite thing that everybody's doing, and look at how much money these kids and these teenagers and these adults are spending on V-Bucks and cosmetic items. And by God damn it, PlayStation needs a game like that." Um, Guess what? Guess what didn't work? Destruction All Stars did not work. Foam Stars, even though Foam Stars was, developed by Square Enix, but it was a PlayStation exclusive, that didn't work. There's a lot of games that just did not fucking work. But Jim is like, we need 12 live service games because everybody is chasing Fortnite, which was a total anomaly. God damn it. Epic caught lightning in a bottle. And the crazy thing is, Sony, they don't own a major percentage. I think they own like 10 to 15% of Epic. So you're getting a nice ROI just based on that. You don't have to chase the tail of this dog that is Fortnite. But Jim Ryan says we're going to do it anyway. And guess what happened? Concord comes out and it's shut down 2 weeks later. And the PlayStation 5 is a great piece of tech, and Jim Ryan basically destroyed it. And the rest of us who have spent, like, I'm not gonna lie, I've still got my launch PS5. My daughter has a launch PS5, and I also am one of the people who spent money on a PlayStation 5 Pro. Those are like, sure, I've got Gran Turismo, I've got Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I've got Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor and Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater and so many third-party titles. And for every every 4 third-party titles, there's one first-party, right? Sure, we got Ghost of Yotei, which I do need to finish, I know. Sure, we're getting Wolverine in the fall. Soros is out, I think, sometime this week or something like that, but I wasn't a huge fan of Returnal, and Soros just looks like Returnal Part 2, I'm not going to lie, so I'm not going to be playing that game. But the fact of the matter is, there's been a very paltry offering from Sony first-party studios. I've said this ad nauseum, and I probably won't stop saying it. In the PlayStation 3 generation, Naughty Dog put out the first 3 Uncharted games. Like every 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. Drake's Fortune was 2007. I think Uncharted 2 was 2009, and Uncharted 3 was 2011, maybe. But they put out the first 3 Uncharted games and put out the first Last of Us at the end of the PlayStation 3 generation. That is 4 AAA titles from one studio in one gaming generation. Like, Insomniac put out, like, great Ratchet and Clank games. Now, they weren't a part of PlayStation Studios at that point. Insomniac was acquired after Spider-Man came out in 2018. But the fact of the matter is there's been a very, very paltry offering from first-party Sony Studios this generation, and it makes a lot of us feel like you kind of fucked us over, Jim Ryan. And again, I don't have access to these boardrooms. I don't own any Sony stock. I'm not an investor, although I probably should be an investor, like, just based on how much stuff I've bought from PlayStation. But I just, Jim Ryan got to, whether he was forced out or whether it was a true retirement, he gets to walk away, and he just left the PlayStation brand in shambles. There's a million fucking different colors of PlayStation DualSense controllers that came out this generation. There's the removable plates for your PlayStation 5 and all that, but where are the games? So far, so we're going to get Intergalactic more than likely next year, but that'll be the first new IP, and not even just in a new universe, but new IP from Naughty Dog this generation. Now, sure, we got the Uncharted Legacy of Thieves collection, which is Uncharted 4 and Lost Legacy. We got The Last of Us rebuilt from the ground up for the PlayStation 5, and then we got The Last of Us Part 2 remastered for the PlayStation 5. But those are all existing games that existed on other PlayStation generations. I'm talking a brand new game from Naughty Dog this generation. Intergalactic will be the only one, and the way it's trending, it looks like that's going to be the only game that Naughty Dog gets out. New game that Naughty Dog gets out this generation, because the PlayStation 6 is not that far off. Again, I don't have a horse I do have a horse in this race because I'm a consumer of PlayStation products. Jim Ryan destroyed the PlayStation 5 generation. There's no two fucking ways about it. There's no way for me to sugarcoat this. There just isn't. And now we have just absolute concrete no bullshit proof. Shuhei Yoshida is a legend in this thing of ours, and he should have been treated better. And the one thing he did, this is why he's extremely classy, because he said Jim wanted him to do some ridiculous things and he wouldn't do it. And he was fired. He did everything but say Jim wanted me to go full tilt on live service games, and I said no, we can't do that. You're going to kill our brand. And Jim's like, all right, well, fuck it, you can go, because that's essentially what happened. Because then Shuhei pops up in this indie role in 2019, and the PlayStation 5 is coming in November of 2020, and it's like nobody thinks this is strange, and then Jim's gone. This, like, and he gets to ride off in the sunset. It's kind of like what happened at Xbox, which we're going to talk about here in a second. How Phil was able to announce, I'm stepping down as the head of Microsoft Gaming. And it's like, oh, well, then Sarah's going to take his position. And it's like, no, Asha Sharma's going to take over, and Sarah's gone. And the funny thing is, Sarah Bond made a post on her LinkedIn account, and then we found out it wasn't her that made the post. It was somebody on her team, and then they were scrambling to get it taken down when Jim... So Phil got to say, hey, I'm going to leave on my own accord, and we had talked about this. Satya and I talked about this back in the fall, and it's like, no, you didn't. They essentially said, we gave you a blank check, and you spent $80 billion of our money and the investors' money, and we have not seen a great ROI. You're now actively putting Xbox first-party IP on a PlayStation console. And then they tried to blame Sarah Bond. Well, Sarah came up with that this is an Xbox. No, Microsoft was touting Xbox Play Anywhere since like the beginning, probably two years into the Xbox One generation, because they dug themselves a fucking hole by pricing it $100 higher than the PlayStation 4 was priced. That wasn't Sarah Bond's fault. The fact that they paraded that black woman out there during Black History Month and did that twice is cause for concern. Microsoft has a problem with reading the room. So since I've basically transitioned into the Microsoft situation, well, there's news to report. So, where are we at? New boss of Xbox is reportedly considering a Game Pass tier that would only include first-party Microsoft games. This is from the other day, and this is from our friends over at IGN. The Verge's Tom Warren said Asha Sharma, who replaced Phil Spencer as boss of Xbox earlier this year, is looking at potentially adding the new Game Pass tier as a part of a shakeup that would evolve the subscription service into a more flexible system, having told staff that, quote, Game Pass has become too expensive for players. Microsoft has a vast network of first-party studios, which includes all Activision, Blizzard, and Bethesda developers. Such a Game Pass tier were to come in effect would presumably be a cheaper option and include the likes of Call of Duty, Fallout, The Elder Scrolls, Diablo, Halo, Forza, Gears of War, and all of the many other first-party games Microsoft now has under its belt. Upcoming first-party Microsoft games include Forza Horizon 6, Halo Campaign Evolved, Gears of War E-Day, Fable, and the next mainline Call of Duty, rumored to be Modern Warfare 4. Microsoft appears to be reassessing all parts of Xbox now that Sharma's in charge. It is reportedly considering pulling its year's Call of Duty game out of Xbox Game Pass as a day one release, with reports indicating the blockbuster first-person shooter series addition to Game Pass was one of the reasons the subscription got more expensive. Aha. Microsoft added Call of Duty games to Game Pass following the company's $69 billion acquisition of Activision Blizzard, while former Xbox executive had insisted sales could be boosted by a game's presence on Game Pass. Some publishers remained unconvinced. Former Activision boss Bobby Kotick, for example, was always against putting Call of Duty into subscription services. Bobby Kotick got off like a fat rat when Microsoft bought Activision. How much did Bobby Kotick make from Microsoft? Former Activision Blizzard CEO Bobby Kotick was set to receive a windfall of roughly $375 million to $400 from Microsoft's acquisition of the company. This massive payout was primarily driven by his ownership of approximately 3.95 million Activision shares. That has got to be illegal on some front, I'm telling you. Anyway, more recently, former boss of Sony Interactive Entertainment, America, Sean Layden, has suggested, also, big ups to Sean Layden. Sean Layden, Shuhei Yoshida, Andrew House, those are the modern fathers of PlayStation gaming, because they made the PlayStation 4 the console to have last generation, and Jim Ryan just destroyed everything those gentlemen worked for, so shout out to those guys. Sean Layton has suggested there's no saving Game Pass. They're trying so hard to will this into health despite unfavorable diagnostics and a grim prognosis, he said. Clarifying post-mortem would do the entire industry some good. So, this was stated a couple days ago. So today is where the pendulum finally swung. This comes directly, at first I was like, this can't be real, but this comes directly from the Xbox Game Pass, the Xbox account from Microsoft, Xbox.com. April 21st, Xbox Game Pass Ultimate price update for immediate release. Starting today, Game Pass Ultimate drops from $29.99 to $22.99 a month. PC Game Pass will also drop from $16.49 to $13.99 a month. Prices may vary by region. Beginning this year, future Call of Duty titles won't join Game Pass Ultimate or PC Game Pass at launch. New Call of Duty games will be added to Game Pass Ultimate and PC Game Pass during the following holiday season about a year later, while existing Call of Duty titles already in the library will continue to be available. So what this means is you are not going to get Call of Duty in Game Pass essentially a year later till the new Call of Duty title for that year releases. Keep up. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscribers will continue to have access to hundreds of games on Xbox console and PC, including current Call of Duty titles, in-game benefits, online console multiplayer, unlimited Xbox Cloud gaming, and major day one releases. You can find more details on Game Pass Ultimate, Game Pass Premium, Game Pass Essential, and PC Game Pass plans here. There's a link. And manage your account here. There's another link. Our players cover a wide breadth of geographies, preferences, and tastes, so while there isn't a single model that's best for everyone, this change responds to a lot of feedback we've gotten so far. We'll continue to listen and learn. Thank you for being a part of the Xbox community. Now, Asha Sharma actually tweeted this link from her account, and I was like, okay, so this is 100% real. So here's the thing. It's an $8 drop in pricing for Game Pass Ultimate. While that is nice, it's still a bit much. Here's the thing, and I've said this ad nauseum, and I'm not going to stop saying it until you guys get the fucking picture. Microsoft acquired Activision Blizzard King, and they're just like, well, this isn't just about Call of Duty, this is about Candy Crush. No, it's not. My mother, who is 65 years old, plays Candy Crush on her iPhone. She's got like her glasses tilted down, like the old people do it. My mother is not the primary audience or the demographic that Microsoft is looking to get. That she's not going to have a high attach rate. I am Microsoft's demographic because I'm a male, age 18 to 50, whatever the fuck, and I spend money on video games. I play a lot of video games. Here I am talking about video games. I'm their target demographic. They're not looking for my mother. They're looking for me. How can we get Derrick to buy more games versus getting Miss Carla to buy more games? Well, you're going to get my money regardless. I'm not going to wait for Forza Horizon 6 to come to PlayStation 5. I'm just going to go ahead and buy it on Xbox. Why? Because I love Forza Horizon 6. Now, I could wait the 6 months or however, whatever the fuck the time frame is for it to launch on PlayStation. But again, it's still going to be the same $70 here or there. So, Game Pass Ultimate for what? 7-8 months or something like that. I don't remember when the price went up. It was $30 a month, which translates to $360 a fucking year. That is too expensive. Keep in mind the Xbox Series S launched at a MSRP of $299.99, which in US dollars is $300. You cannot have a subscription service cost more than the console. Now, obviously the price of the Series S and the Series X have both gone up. I think it's still within the same neighborhood. Then you still have a console and a subscription service around the same price. That's too much money. The point of the Xbox and then the Game Pass was you spend the major money on the console, you're going to save on the games because of Game Pass. That $8 drop-off, it's all right, but are you really getting your money's worth when they're not putting Call of Duty in their day and date? Because now the conversation online is very mixed. Some people are like, well, this is a good thing. It depends. This is a glass half full / half empty situation. It's a double-edged sword. It's a catch-22. It's whatever way you as the consumer want to look at it. But when all you people are who are super duper Team Green, aka Xbox, aka Xbots, when y'all were like, yeah, we got Activision Blizzard King, we're gonna kill Sony. When the FTC blocked that initially, and y'all were like, this is bullshit, and I'm like, you guys really don't want them to acquire them. They're like, yeah, we got to kill PlayStation. I'm like, look, this is a lot of money. Microsoft has to get a return on their investment, and they're going to get it one way or the other. And you're not going to like it when they do so. They're like, no, we'll be fine. I'm like, hey, when this much money is spent, usually it's the consumer that eats the cost. No, we'll be fine. Okay, so what happens? What happens after the deal goes through? The price of the Xbox goes up. No, Game Pass went up first. I think it was a couple of dollars, like $5. Game Pass went up twice in like in a 6 month period. The price went up twice, and then the price of the consoles went up twice as well. What did I tell you? The consumer will eat the cost. I'll never forget last year, Nintendo had the direct for the Switch 2. And they're like, you can pre-order this next week. And then what happened? 2 days before the pre-order, Trump is like, we're going to impose tariffs on foreign lands. And Nintendo's like, whoa, 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 we're not going to open pre-orders because we have to figure this out. And what did I keep saying? The consumer will eat the cost. And people didn't listen. So the cool thing about Nintendo, they're like, okay, we're not going to charge more for the console. However, the accessories, the controllers, the camera, all that stuff, it's going to go up a few bucks. The consumer eats the price, and that's the same thing that happened here. Y'all did all this campaigning for the FTC to let this deal go through, and now you don't even get the yearly Call of Duty title day and date in Game Pass. You have to buy it. For me, it's not a big deal. For the people who bought Xboxes and are like, I have Game Pass, I don't care. You, Xbox, Phil Spencer, Phil's responsible for this as well. Phil Spencer, Matt Booty. This was before Sarah Bond was there, so she can't take any flack for this, but they'll find a way to blame her anyway because, well, she's a woman, and number two, she's a black woman. You conditioned your ecosystem to not buy games, and you condition them to believe it's better to subscribe to the subscription service where they can get the games. Well, guess what? You have to wait for the major third-party titles that are not part of the Microsoft ecosystem. Those games go in and out all the time. If your backlog, I'm going to add this because I'll play this eventually. And think about how long your backlog is. My backlog is a mile long because I just don't have a lot of time. Like, most of the time when I'm playing gaming, it's for Patreon, to be completely honest with you. Like, lately I've found time. I've forced myself to sit down and play video games just for the fun of it and to escape other things going on in my life. But things are looking up. You condition, like I said, you condition your ecosystem that it's okay to not spend their money on games. And then you wonder why you're failing. If you watch any Microsoft show or any, like, where they're showing third-party games, like, if you watch it on YouTube and you watch with the chat open, you will literally see people type in there, if it's not in Game Pass, I ain't playing it. Because they don't want to spend the $70 for the game. But then they get mad when studios get shut down or when games don't, like, why didn't they make a sequel to this game? You guys didn't support the first game because you had to pay for it. What a novel idea that we pay for our content, right? What a novel idea that the people that create these things, not only in gaming, I'm talking about fucking albums and movies as well. I had a coworker be so surprised. I went to see Super Mario Galaxy, and I was like, they were like, did you like it? I was like, yeah, I pre-ordered the movie on iTunes, like, right in the theater. They're like, you bought it? And I was like, yeah, what's wrong with that? And like, why would you buy it? I'm like, well, number one, I'm a filmmaker, so, like, I want to support other artists, and number two, you don't like owning your content? Well, it's going to be in a streaming service. And they can take that shit off of there at any time. I remember they put Lil Wayne Dedication 3 mixtape on Apple Music last year. I was so hyped. Not Dedication 3, I'm sorry, Dedication 1 and 2. And 3 was up there. And I listened to that shit, like, back to back because it was nostalgic for me. It brought back a time when I had no responsibilities before I was a father. My daughter's downstairs taking a shower, and I don't want her to hear this. Like, you're the best thing that ever happened to me, by the way. Anyway, and I was listening to it, and then one day I went to listen, and it wasn't there anymore. They pulled that shit down. They pull shit off of streaming services all the time. I prefer to own my content. I'm sorry. And people are like, well, what's the advantage? Buy a fucking hard drive and back it up. It's that fucking simple. I am still actively buying physical copies of music. My vinyl collection is growing. My CD collection is still pretty fucking big. And I'm now buying cassette tapes. I don't have a cassette tape player, but I still enjoy physical media. I enjoy reading the liner notes and stuff. I remember when album artwork was a big deal. I feel the same way about video games. I remember, I want to say it was the PlayStation 4, Xbox One generation where they stopped putting manuals in the games. Now, it used to be a thing to go to GameStop at midnight for a midnight release, or go to a 24-hour Walmart and buy the game. Now we're just like, oh, I pre-ordered it. It's downloading in the background, and then 11 o'clock p.m. on whatever day it releases, I'm going to be there to play it. And I'm guilty of the same thing, too. But there are certain games where I've bought the digital copy just to play it on night one, and I've ordered the collector's edition, and it's like, it'll be here from Amazon in like 2 days. The Last of Us Part 2 I got as a birthday present. I have the collector's edition, but I had the digital edition. Spider-Man on PlayStation 4, I had the digital edition, but I also ordered the collector's edition. There are many albums where I've bought them from the iTunes store, and I still have the CD and the vinyl of it. Because I believe in preserving media, number one. And number two, I feel like artists and creators should be, they should be compensated for their work. When a game goes into Game Pass, the studio gets cut a check by Microsoft. It's usually enough to keep the studio solvent so they can continue to pay salaries and stuff like that. Sometimes Game Pass can save a small studio. But sometimes, like, the developers at the studio, they have incentives based on sales of said game. So if the head of their studio is like, hey, if we sell 5 million copies, everybody gets X amount for a bonus. And they're like, yeah, let's do it. And they know they've got an absolute banger. And then 2 days later, they find out their game is going into Game Pass. So it's like, nobody's going to buy it because they'll just fucking subscribe to Game Pass. So all of these people who depend on these bonuses to make it too, like, you have to remember, you're not putting out a game every year. This is not the NES or Sega Genesis era where they cranked out games because it was less expensive to make games in 8-bit and 16-bit and even the 32-bit days. Remember, I said the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 was the first HD era of video games. Naughty Dog put out 4 games on the PlayStation 4. That is absolutely unheard of in today's time, unless it's an annual title like a 2K, a Madden, an NHL, FIFA, college football, an annual title. That doesn't happen with other games. So the Game Pass slight price drop, I mean, it's a start, but they haven't earned my trust yet. I'm not going back to Game Pass Ultimate. I'm just not. They've got to change. There's a lot more that needs to change there before I reinvest in their ecosystem at that level. And that's just the way it is. I don't know. We shall see, though. All right? So, anyway, those are the changes that are happening. However, as recording this, more information has come out regarding Xbox. This is loading really quickly. Sorry on X. Sorry about the pause there, guys. And this comes from Jeff Keighley, so I do believe this. Xbox has announced its new strategy. Quote, the model that got us here won't be the one that takes us forward. Changes will include reevaluation of exclusivity, Windows, and AI. A lot of people... So, the Windows is very, very curious because the next console is supposed to be a PC hybrid and run a version of Windows, which is why you would be able to install Steam and GOG and Epic Game Store and stuff like that. Or are they reevaluating the Windows strategy is how it pertains to Xbox and Xbox running on PC? I don't know. Microsoft Gaming is here and gone. Apparently it's going back to Xbox. Whatever you refer to gaming as it pertains to Microsoft, it will be just Xbox. This Microsoft Gaming thing is apparently done. And then new North Star, daily active players. This one I feel like is, I'm not going to call it a mistake, but this is why they say games failed. It's like, oh, I looked on Steam and they only had X amount of players daily. That doesn't mean a game failed. That's still a sale. Now, if it's an online game, a multiplayer live service game, I guess because they want to make more money on cosmetics and microtransactions and stuff like that. If it's a single player game, there's games I don't play every day that I need to finish. That's why my backlog is as long as it is. But that just doesn't make any sense. I think that they need to focus on the first two, though. The reevaluation of exclusivity, Windows and AI. I don't think AI has a place in gaming. If it helps with development, that's one thing. But I think we have to be very, very careful about how this is handled. But yes, exclusivity, they need to pivot and figure out how that works within the Xbox ecosystem. I know it's tough considering it's going to be hard to put that genie back in the bottle, especially because the developers are seeing a return on their investment by games being placed on the PlayStation Store. Um, so I don't know how you flip that one back. It's like, hey, we're gonna flip that switch back. We're no longer putting our games on PlayStation. I guess that we will see some hint of that on June 7th. I don't know. Microsoft gaming back to Xbox. I think that that's the right thing, because it has become your gaming division. Like it's. I don't think it's necessary to have Xbox as a brand under Microsoft Gaming. I think it's completely fine for Xbox to be the brand for Microsoft Gaming. So I have no problem with these changes, except for stop paying attention to daily active players because every game is not a live service game. And I think people need to remember that. Like, some people don't like playing fucking live service titles all day long. Um, I don't know. That's just my thoughts. Separate from that, some information came out. Two things, basically, regarding Naughty Dog. I'm going to start with the first one. Apparently, Uncharted 4, A Thief's End, was almost canceled. Apparently, the prototype was criticized for having no clear objectives, clunky controls, and a story that was difficult to follow. I would love to know what the story was before we got the final version. Funding threats. Corporate leadership reportedly threatened to pull funding for the project unless these issues were resolved immediately. There was an internal shakeup. The period of turmoil led to a massive shift in leadership and direction for the game. Amy Hennig's departure, the original creative lead and series creator, Amy Hennig, left Naughty Dog in April of 2014 amid these development struggles. Neil Druckmann and Bruce Straley, fresh off the success of The Last of Us, took over the project. They famously scrapped a large portion of Hennig's original work to steer the game toward its final, more grounded vision. While the game eventually launched to worldwide acclaim in 2016, these recent developer interviews highlight that it was once on the brink of being scrapped entirely. This is very, very interesting, in my opinion, and there is an article. According to former Naughty Dog lighting artist Gabriel Betancourt, the game had been in production for roughly 2.5 to 3 years when corporate leadership, likely Sony, began questioning the project's quality. Despite the studio's previous string of hits, the early version of Uncharted 4 faced significant hurdles. A director from another team was brought in to review the build and reportedly stated, quote, "This game sucks." This is very interesting. So this is just what came up in my Google cards. Game Rant has a story about this. An article, not a story, I'm sorry. Ex-Naughty Dog devs revealed that Uncharted 4's A Thief End almost never saw the light of day after higher-ups were unimpressed by its early build. Today, the end of the Nathan Drake saga stands as one of the most fondly remembered titles from this studio, but there was a time when it didn't seem like the game would be able to reach such heights. If the team hadn't reworked Uncharted 4 deep into its development, it may not have ever come out. It's been 10 years since the release of the last Uncharted game, but there are signs of movement around the franchise. While Naughty Dog is hard at work on Intergalactic: The Heretic Prophet, multiple sources say a new Uncharted project is also in the works, possibly a remake of the first game, a fifth entry, or perhaps both. Those reports are unconfirmed for now, but as the series has come back into the public eye, new details about the existing games have emerged. Again, Naughty Dog threatened to pull Uncharted 4's funding nearly 3 years in development. That would be Sony. In a recent episode of Kiwi Talks podcast, former Naughty Dog artist Gabriel Betancourt explained how Uncharted 4 had to be redone after facing severe backlash from higher-ups. According to Betancourt, a director from another team held a meeting one day and told devs this game sucks. At the time, Uncharted 4 was already over 2.5 years into development, so devs planned to ignore the criticism and proceed as usual. But then corporate shared the same feedback and threatened to pull funding if they didn't fix it. This is ultimately why Uncharted 4's original director left the project and The Last of Us, Neil Druckmann and Bruce Straley took over. I always wondered why Amy Hennig left Naughty Dog. And if you were in the know, then that's great. I was not. It was one of those questions like, she created a great series and then she's out. What the hell happened? And because I wondered how the pivot went from The Last of Us to something like, from Uncharted to something like The Last of Us. But then again, also how you pivoted from Crash Bandicoot to Jak and Daxter, from Jak and Daxter to Uncharted, from Uncharted to The Last of Us, from The Last of Us to Intergalactic. Who knows how we get these places? We just seem to find ourselves there. And I think Naughty Dog has actually handled it quite well. However, this is very telling. So Druckmann and Straley took over. Naughty Dog would successfully rework Uncharted 4 and eventually put the game out, but not every title of the studio has been so lucky. Another ex-employee recently revealed that a standalone Last of Us multiplayer game was 80% complete before it was scrapped. We talked about this a few weeks ago. An unfortunate outcome that came as Naughty Dog had to choose between that game and Intergalactic amid shifting budgets. Thankfully for Uncharted fans, the Thief's End managed to escape that fate, but as Betancourt explains it wasn't an easy process to get it across the finish line. It took harsh words from both corporate and the unnamed Naughty Dog director, as well as a change in leadership for the team to avoid resting on the success of the previous 3 titles and put out Uncharted 4 version that fans know today. I wonder what the original story was. That would be awesome to find out. It's worth noting that Betancourt never specifically said whether the game in this story was Uncharted 4. However, all signs point in that direction. Betancourt mentions that it was the 4th game in the series. Bingo, Uncharted 4. And The Thief's End is only the 4th title in the franchise to come out of Naughty Dog during his tenure there. There's 3 Jak and Daxters, I think. I'd have to look it up. But yes, there are 4. Technically, if you consider Lost Legacy it's its own standalone game and not additional, well, it was initially supposed to be additional DLC, but then it became a standalone title, but not of the same level as Uncharted, Uncharted 2, or Uncharted 3 or 4. That's why it costs less. Same thing with Spider-Man Miles Morales. Not as big an adventure as Spider-Man 2018. Story is shorter, condensed. That's why it came off a little cheaper. I didn't get it cheaper. I bought the deluxe version that came with the Spider-Man 2018 remastered for the PlayStation 5. So, fuck me. His explanation of the original director being replaced by 2 others also lines up with Druckmann and Straley taking over the game. Uncharted 4's 5-year development time fits the timeline presented in the anecdote. 2016, because Uncharted 3 came out 2011. 5 years, 2016. He's about right. He is right. And there was the Nathan Drake collection that came out prior to that kind of hold us over. Despite the drama during development, the game would go on to be one of the studio's biggest successes. A 93 on Metacritic means Uncharted 4 is one of the highest rated Naughty Dog games of all time. Which is no small feat for such a renowned developer. It's unclear how much changed from the original build that leadership said sucked, as is whether it would have been able to reach the same heights had it not started over, but at least things ended well, even if they were dark for a moment. Amy Hennig was supposed to do, I think she was in charge of that Black Panther game. What is she doing now? Let's see. Notable works: Legacy of Kain, Jak and Daxter, Uncharted. 2 years after being hired at Electronic Arts, worked as an artist on Michael Jordan Chaos in the Windy City. Is that a game? That is, for Super Nintendo. The lead designer quit. Hennig landing the job. In the late 1990s, she moved to Crystal Dynamics, where she assisted Silicon Knights in the development of Blood Omen Legacy of Kain. She later acted as the director, producer, and writer for the Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver. She also directed and wrote Soul Reaver 2, Legacy of Kain Defiance. Departed Crystal Dynamics to act as creative director for Naughty Dog. She contributed to the Jak and Daxter series before working as the game director for Uncharted Drake's Fortune, and as head writer and creative director for the Uncharted series. With Uncharted 2 Among Thieves, Hennig led the 150-person team who created the game, as well as acting as writer. After directing and writing Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception and beginning work on Uncharted 4 A Thief's End for the PlayStation 4, Hennig left Naughty Dog in 2014. In April of 2014, Hennig joined Visceral Games with Todd Stashwick to work on Project Ragtag, a Star Wars game that never came out. It was reported in October 2017 that EA was shutting down Visceral Games and that their Star Wars project was delayed and moved to another studio to allow for significant change. A representative of EA told Polygon that EA are in discussions with Amy about her next move. Hennig announced the following June that she had left EA in January and started a small studio to explore options involving virtual reality games. In November 2019, Hennig announced that she had joined Skydance Media to start a new division there. Skydance New Media for new story-focused experiences that will employ state-of-the-art computer graphics to provide the visual fidelity of television and film, but with an active, lean-in experience that puts the audience in the driver's seat. Stashwick said in May of 2021 that he worked with Hennig on a live-action adventure game. In September, this was revealed to be Forspoken. Interesting. Hennig and Stashwick are part of the writing team alongside Gary Whitta and Allison Reimer. Shout out Reimer, shout out Whitta. In October 2021, Skydance New Media later announced that it was working with Marvel Entertainment to produce a new action-adventure game that will take place in the Marvel Universe. In September 2022, it was revealed that it was an untitled Captain America and Black Panther game, so I was correct. In March 2024, the game's name was revealed as Marvel 1943 Rise of Hydra. In April of 2022, Skydance New Media and Lucasfilm Games announced they are working on a narrative-driven action-adventure featuring an original story in the Star Wars galaxy, with Henning at the helm. Hydra, Marvel 1943 Rise of Hydra was supposed to be out and it got pushed back. Scheduled to be released beyond early 2026. Originally slated for holiday 2025 and early 2026. Well, it's April of 2026, so needless to say, that game ain't coming anytime soon. But we really, really want it. Shout out to Amy Hennig, though. She is a legend in this business. I would never try to say that, Amy Hennig, she put asses in seats. She put asses in seats. I've played everything that Naughty Dog has to offer. She has done amazing work. She's a great writer. I think she just needs to find her footing with the right studio. But hopefully Marvel, this game actually sees the light of day. So, let's see. Where are we at now? Oh, Troy Baker speaks on probably one of his most iconic characters, Joel Miller, from The Last of Us. Quote, we've not seen The Last of Us. We've not seen The Last of Joel, says The Last of Us actor. Last of Us video game actor Troy Baker has said there's more to come for his character Joel, potentially including more games. Then it would have to be a prequel, because Joel is dead. And that's not a spoiler. The Last of Us Part 2 came out in June of 2020. It is April of 2026. Don't be like, Derek, you're spoiling shit. You've had 6 fucking years to play that game. I don't want to hear that spoiler shit. You had 6 years to play the game. Anyway, Baker, who played Joel in Naughty Dog's The Last of Us in his sequel, made the remark while discussing the character's impact with fans. Something an audience wider than video games has enjoyed with Pedro Pascal's portrayal of the character in the HBO's Last of Us television series. IGN says, warning, spoilers for The Last of Us video games and TV show follow. It's not a spoiler. Because Season 2 of The Last of Us on HBO was an absolute fucking abject failure and a disaster. This is widely and critically, discussed. Alright? And as I just stated, The Last of Us Part 2 came out in June of 2020, when we were all still in the house before they opened up outside. Alright? You had time to play the fucking game. Alas, with Joel now dead in the games and the TV show, you'd think that would likely be it for the flannel-wearing hunk, but not so, said Baker, who likened the character to one potentially portrayed by many actors over time. Probably another comic. Quote, I hope that Pedro is not the last person to play Joel, Baker said, speaking to Eurogamer. I want to see this character be proliferated and iterated on in multiple mediums, whether it be TV, film, more games, comic books. I see people that cosplay Joel all the time. He made an impact. Baker's comments come hot on the heels of remarks by franchise creator Neil Druckmann that suggested a third Last of Us game will eventually get made, even if it is still some time off. Indeed, a former colleague of Druckmann's recently shared an eye-opening plot idea that the creator had once planned, which could seemingly play a large part. I hadn't heard about this. Let me click on this link. Oh, so there was something there and IGN took it down, which means that Naughty Dog called Sony yo, tell IGN to cut it the fuck out. And PlayStation called over to IGN you take that shit down or you're not getting early access to any PlayStation first-party titles. More than likely, I'm telling you that's what happened. Anyway, surely in a future game featuring Ellie would also include at least one flashback to her time with Joel as a send-off to the series and Baker's original take on the character. Some kind of cameo for Pascal in HBO's final season of The Last of Us also feels inevitable. Quote, I definitely know we've not seen The Last of Joel, whether that be Naughty Dog or somebody else. Baker concluded exactly when Joel may appear next, however, remains to be seen. For his part, Druckmann has never ruled out making a third chapter of the saga, and Naughty Dog's official Grounded 2 making The Last of Us Part 2 documentary even ends with Druckmann stating that he feels there's one more chapter to the story for Naughty Dog to tell. In the meantime, the studio is busy building Intergalactic: The Heretic Prophet, which Druckmann is directing. The developer also has a second game in production that's being directed by Sean Eskay, who previously helmed Uncharted: The Lost Legacy, which is not believed to be The Last of Us related. All that likely means The Last of Us 3 won't launch until sometime in the 2030s, which we knew anyway. This story comes from Tom Phillips over at IGN. Here's the thing. saying that there has to be a Joel cameo in any potential Last of Us 3 game, you have to tie it up. Ellie having the flashbacks of Joel on the porch in The Last of Us 2 after her, like when she's fighting Abby, that tied it up. That's why she stopped. She could have killed Abby for revenge reasons for killing Joel. But it's just, revenge is a dirty cycle. Joel killed Abby's father because Ellie became his surrogate daughter. So Abby wanted her revenge and killed Joel, and because of that, then Ellie wanted her revenge. Ellie stopped to end the cycle. The cycle, what am I saying? Cycle. She's having these flashbacks as all of this is happening. I think you've kind of done what you needed to do with Joel in the games. Unless you're going to do a prequel that shows what it was like for Tommy and Joel in the Fireflies, or I'm sorry, Tommy and Joel during the outbreak, and maybe how Tommy got with the Fireflies. I don't know. But at the end of the day, I think we've seen the best of of Joel Miller. This is a very clickbaity article, and I'm pretty pissed off, and I'm not going to lie, but I should have known better. No, I don't think we've seen the last of Joel Miller. I just don't think we're not getting a new, like, The Last of Us Part 3 could potentially be happening. Like, they could be in some form of pre-production, in Neil's head, anyway, because he's got to get Intergalactic out of the door. We expect Intergalactic fall of 2027, in my opinion, right? He's got to get that game out the door. But I guarantee when he gets a few minutes to himself, he jots down ideas of how the Last of Us will come to its conclusion. Generally, all good stories are a trilogy. If it gets a sequel, you have to finish it off. The only trilogy that I think was a complete disaster, I'm sorry. So The Godfather is a great, Godfather 2, great. Godfather 3 really shit the bed. Robert Duvall didn't want to come back unless he got a certain amount of money. They killed Fredo in the second one. So couldn't bring Fred. There's just so much going on, and the Mobiliari situation, just like the Vatican, like why do I need all this? I do want The Last of Us to get its final chapter. I think it's deserved. I think it's absolutely deserved, and not for nothing. Drake's Deception could have ended the Uncharted series. The Uncharted series got 5 games. 5 games. They could have stopped with Drake's Deception. At this point, I really, really want to know what Amy Hennig's story was for Uncharted 4. I really have to know at this point. Because if it's Neil and Bruce that gave us the ending and the epilogue with Cassie Drake and Nate and Elena living on the beach, and that beautiful Easter egg of Crash Bandicoot in the beginning of the game and at the end in Cassie's bedroom with the classic PlayStation. I thought all of that was just absolutely remarkable. Yeah, I could go for another Uncharted game. I really could. I remember Naughty Dog saying they were done with that story. And remember I told you guys, I'm not saying I knew this was happening, but remember I said, just because Naughty Dog is done with it does not mean that Sony is done with it. That just means they could pass it off to another studio. Naughty Dog would have some assistance on it. But, I mean, I don't know what this other game is that's being directed. Hopefully we find out shortly after Intergalactic launches. But I like hearing that, knowing for sure that Intergalactic is obviously in development. That trailer at the Game Awards still gave me chills and goosebumps. I thought it was immaculate. I love the spaceship being made by Porsche. I love the spaceship having a CD changer. The spaceship playing Pet Shop Boys. I am really, really excited for this game. I hope we see more sometime this summer. I think that we're obviously going to get a Wolverine deep dive or more Wolverine footage. And we already know the release date, so there's no need to do that. But I want to see Intergalactic get something. It got its proper stage being, previewed, or the trailer premiere being at the Game Awards. I thought that was excellent. Now I want to see more. I really want to see more. But yeah, I could go for another Uncharted game. You don't have to twist my arm. It's like, oh God, you twisted my arm. Fine, I'll play Uncharted 5. Yeah, because I was gonna play it anyway. Even if it's a remake of Drake's Fortune, I would be down for that because people are like it still looks good. I was like, that game came out in 2007. It is 2026. It'll be 20 years next year. So, if it's a Drake's Fortune remake, it's 20 years. You can't say it doesn't need to be done. You just can't say that. And I'd be fine if it was just that. I would be completely fine. I would love for it to be a brand new Uncharted like game, but if it's just Uncharted Drake's Fortune, remade or the remake, I'm perfectly fine with that. Perfectly fine with that. We shall see. Um, and hopefully we find out more sooner than later. That's all I'm saying. Super Mario Galaxy movie stays atop of the charts as Super Mario film series passes 2 billion globally. Congratulations to Nintendo and Illumination. I hate to tell you this. Coleman Domingo, Neil Long, Jafar Jackson, etc. Lorenz Tate, Laura Harrier, Miles Teller, Mike Myers, Dion Cole. They're on your heels. Mike Myers and Dion Cole are in the Michael biopic. I'm not going to tell you who they play, but they're on your heels and they are coming. As far as other news about the Mario Galaxy movie, Miyamoto says he wants Peach's origin story in the Super Mario Galaxy movie to remain canon in future games. Warning, this article contains spoilers for the Super Mario Galaxy movie. You should probably fast forward ahead if you haven't seen the movie. Anyway, as reported by Nintendo Dreamweb, Miyamoto conducted a group interview with Japanese media to mark the Japanese release of the Super Mario Galaxy movie this Friday, April 24th. One of the reporters asked Miyamoto what would happen to Peach's surprise backstory, which is revealed in the film, most notably that she and Rosalina are sisters who were separated as children, whether this was now the official canon. Miyamoto replied that Nintendo has avoided going into characters' backstories too much in the past because it can limit what they can do with those characters going forward, but now that their pasts have been explored more in the movies, the plan is to try to establish this as an official lore for the upcoming games. Quote, because we don't always know what kind of game we'll make next, having too many characters' backstories can end up restricting us, Miyamoto explained via machine translation. Quote, I'm fine with being bound by the gameplay, but I didn't want to be constrained by a story we'd created. This is the reason why we had avoided making movies for so many years. Until we made this film, then we hadn't decided on Peach's origins, but now that we've made the movie, it's become fun to expand on the character in various ways. Therefore, I'd like to adhere to the backstory established in the movie as much as possible in future games. Again, the Super Mario Galaxy movie remained the top of the U.S. box office for the third week in a row this past weekend, passing a major milestone for the series as a whole. Both films combined have now surpassed $2 billion in the global box office. So they made it seem like this one wasn't. I was like, that's pretty fucking early for $2 billion. But like I said, the Michael biopic is on your heels. It's coming. The likelihood of Super Mario Galaxy movie grossing more than $1 billion globally may become clear next weekend when the film is finally released in Japan. Japan, of course, a major market for the first film where it grossed nearly $102 million. A similarly strong showing for the sequel will make an eventual total global box office of more than $1 billion, more than likely. I wonder what the third one's going to be. I wonder if it'll follow Mario 3 and be a stage play. That would be kind of cool. And then see the rest of the Koopa kids since we got Bowser Jr. I just, see the Tanuki suit, the P-Wing. I think we've already seen the airships in Mario films, haven't we? I don't know. Doesn't matter. But keep your eye out for that because it's Super Mario Brothers. Why the fuck would we not? Trying to see if there's anything else before we wrapped up. I've got nothing right now. I think that's it. I think we covered it. So yeah, I got to get out of here because I got to handle recording for Pause Menu Society. Again, just keeping this alive. Summer Games Fest is Friday, June 5th. We will be covering that. It will be a cross promotion here with the Derrick Lamon Experience on Patreon, as well as Pause Menu Society. And then June 7th, that's Sunday, we have the Xbox Showcase. We don't know when the PlayStation State of Play or Showcase is going to be, and we don't know when the Nintendo Direct is going to be. That Nintendo Direct is probably my biggest focus right now after finding out apparently Nintendo was leaking false stuff just to fuck with leakers. I'm going to be really pissed if we don't see Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time remake. I'm going to be really, really pissed. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm gonna be really fucking pissed, but we shall see. Anyway, that's gonna do it for yours truly. I'm going to go ahead and end this like I end everything else. Believe in yourself first and foremost, because if you don't believe in yourself, of course, nobody else will believe in you. As always, my name is Derrick Lamon Jackson, and ladies and gentlemen, that is my time. Y'all have a good one. See you around.